Hopefully you already follow and subscribe to The Counselor and the Con wherever you listen to podcasts.
And guess what? You can also check us out on YouTube. Like, subscribe, and check the bell for full episodes and exclusive content. I'm Counselor at Law Cam Nichols.
And I'm former criminal turned comedian Iggy Samaniego.
On this episode of The Counselor and the Con, we talk about interactions with law enforcement. Some good, some bad, and what do we do when they don't go the way that we think they should?
We're just going to keep it real this one.
We hope you enjoy listening as much as we did recording. This podcast episode contains strong language and adult content. It may not be suitable for young listeners or really anyone. Please use your judgment. The following is a true crime story. Names have been changed to protect those involved. In 2003, Andrew Collins joined the Benton Harbor Police Department. Within 2 years, he was racking up convictions, and he was even promoted to lead detective. He describes himself at the time as an adrenaline junkie. He viewed people, or their arrests, as almost prizes, and he would do whatever it took to get a conviction, even if it meant falsifying evidence or reports. On February 8th of 2006, Jameel McGee was going to the store with a friend in his friend's car to buy food for a family gathering. It was the same store that Officer Collins had been told would be the site of a drug deal. Officer Collins confronted Mr. McGee as he was leaving the store. He searched the friend's car on a pretense and found an ounce of crack in the center console. Even though the crack belonged to Jameel's friend, Officer Collins was sure Jameel McGee was his man. So he falsified an addendum to his report, and later he lied under oath in federal court to secure Jameel McGee's conviction. Mr. McGee was sentenced to 10 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. He served that sentence for 3 years before Officer Collins' crimes and offenses caught up to him. He even had cash and crack in a lockbox in his office to plant for future arrests. He confessed to everything, and he was sentenced to 37 months in federal prison, of which he served 18 months. Jameel McGee's conviction was overturned, and he was released. A few years later, the now former Officer Collins and Jameel McGee met by accident in a park. After a tense encounter, Mr. McGee walked away. But 4 years later, they met again when, against all odds, Jameel was placed for a job mentorship program at a local cafe with none other than Andrew as his mentor. Jameel credits God for the strength and message to let his anger towards Andrew go, and Jameel forgave the man who led to his wrongful imprisonment for 3 years. Here's the epilogue. After working together at the cafe, Jameel and Andrew got to know one another very well. They considered themselves best friends, and in 2017, they wrote a book about their mutual experience. And it all started with that one fateful interaction with law enforcement. Welcome to The Counselor and the Con, a true crime comedy podcast that goes off the record to bring together a former criminal turned comedian and a current lawyer turned crime enthusiast. We dip into stories from the world of crime and punishment, and it turns out we're friends.
Homies.
I'm Counselor at Law Cam Nichols.
And I'm Iggy Samaniego / Chile Pelon.
On this episode, we're going to be talking about interactions between law enforcement and those suspected of a crime, or even civilians in general. This has become a real hot button issue in recent days in 2020. I think everyone has an opinion, and most of us have some bias that we're working through as well. So I just kind of wanted to start off by talking about that and by saying, we're not really here to take sides. We're not here to disrespect law enforcement officers, and we're also not here to disrespect those who were victims of officers who were acting outside the law. We're just here to kind of talk about some law enforcement interactions and how those unfolded, and hopefully share some stories that Iggy might have as well.
Oh, I got a couple. And you know what? I got a couple from both sides, because you said we're not gonna make it about this, we're not gonna make it about that. But what we are gonna make it about is we're gonna have the fucking conversation. It is a hot topic. Usually means uncomfortable, but we're gonna have it.
Right. And we might make jokes or laugh, but we do so because that's how we're processing this and how we're kind of working through this topic together. It's a difficult one. So we're just trying to have, like I said, we're trying to have a conversation. We're going to be actually doing this for a couple of episodes where we talk about law enforcement and again, some positive, some negative, and from different perspectives.
I dig that.
So Iggy, what you got for me this week?
If we're going to have the conversation about a subject like this, I wanted to at least be real, right? Because when you told me this lead-in story, I'm like, cool, that's awesome. But when you tell me the story of Officer Collins framing this kid, I did not expect to hear a Jason. You know what I'm saying? I knew it was gonna be a Jameel. So that kind of sucks too. Where we have to have the uncomfortable conversation also about it does lean one way. It just does.
Yeah, I think that especially, again, in today's conversation about the interactions between law enforcement and those on the other side of that interaction, that race has really become the topic that folks are focusing in on. And I think it sounds like from our story, and then also maybe some from your experience as well, that really is part, that has to be part of the conversation.
It does. And before I even tell you how I feel about this, I could already tell half of the people listening are going to go, fuck this guy, whatever. Half of the people are going to listen are going to hate me. Half of them are going to understand. But we're going to have this conversation. Look, because I could go on both sides of this argument. Have you ever had a cop screw you over?
Not really. That's
there you go. And I don't know if you guys know this, but Kim is white, right? And I've seen it. I've seen it personally. I've seen it with family members, loved ones, whatever, right? But I've also seen cops do cool shit. So I can't, I can't hate. I could hate them and go, cops are the enemies, and I could reciprocate the hate. But I could also show them love because, let me tell you a story about my boxing coach, Tom McGee, man. This dude was a retired Irish cop. This is in the 90s. I'm in an alternative school. I'm basically one step away from them just going, dude, you don't fit into any fucking school. Every school I stepped foot in, I got kicked out of. Every one of them.
Oh, wow.
When I get to Remete's Academy for the gifted but not so talented. And that was an unofficial motto of the school. And when I get there, I don't give a shit, man. I'm a gangbanger in the 90s. I don't care. I already have a tattoo on my face. What's up? And I get there and there's a bunch of gangs already there. There's a boxing class in the basement of this school, right? The big echoey room, boxing class, and also a health class. Well, the teacher and the boxing coach was this retired Irish dude, Tom McGee. And when I was there, I kind of wanted to change my life around, but all I thought, when I promised my mom, I'm going to change you around, mom, I swear, I'm going to do it for you. I meant it. But I mean graduate and shit. I just mean like I'm going to not...
You didn't mean that you were going to like go to law school next week?
The expectations were low, girl. That, and look, people don't know this, but Kim is like really smart. She's like a genius. Did you ever have trouble hiding your studies or whatever? Like,
I never had to hide my studies. I just didn't really pay as much attention maybe as I should have to them, even in my position.
But you got smarter. And what I'm trying to tell you is that in the 90s, in the hood, this school was in the fucking hood. Well, in the 90s, it was kind of like frowned upon to be smart. So I would be sitting in my class. The only school I didn't get kicked out of was this one, because I loved the boxing class. You dig? And anyway, so I'm in this class and I'm sitting on top of the desk like a badass, and the teacher comes up, Coach McGee, and he gave me the paper back. Like I turned in a ditto, and he goes, 70, that's not good enough. You're smarter than this. And I go, yeah, whatever. Like, don't tell my friends I'm smart. What are you trying to say?
He was like calling you out.
He was, and I was like, what the fuck? And he goes, this is how I know that you're smarter than that. He goes, you're the one that sits, when you sit down, faces me and listens while I'm teaching the class. No one gave a shit, girl. When I tell you this school was full, it was like a little prison. It really was. No one there gave a shit. They all had weapons, drugs, whatever, right? It was one of those like Dangerous Minds type of fucking setting. Anyway, so when he told me that, I was like, oh shit, he did call me out. Because normally I would sit in the front.
What made you pay attention to Coach McGee?
This is the funny part, because I wasn't sitting in the front and paying attention because I wanted to. It's just if I sat in the back, that's where my rivals were. And we were going to fucking fight and get expelled. So I was sitting in the front to avoid getting kicked out of this school.
It was like part of your last ditch effort to do it right.
Yeah, but what was tripped out is that this man, and he told me this after about, this started like in the beginning of the semester, right? So by the end of the semester, he blew my mind again, because he goes, I told you were better than them. And he was looking down at no one. He just said, you're smarter than that, you're better than that. And I go, why? And he goes, because now you're doing your homework without me asking you. And look at everyone else. They're gone. They either got locked up, they quit, or they dropped out. He goes, you didn't.
So did you know that this coach and teacher was a former law enforcement officer when you decided to take the class? Or did you even have a choice about taking the class?
I didn't have the choice about taking the class, but I did weasel my way into having 4 boxing classes instead of 2, just to be there in his class. Because look, when I was quitting gangs, people don't know this shit, man. I've talked to kids that are trying to quit gangs or whatever. And a lot of people don't know this. They don't tell you this. When you quit a gang, all the cats you had beef with, they still fucking hate you. And in this school, it was all concentrated. So I would tell Coach McGee, dude, I don't want to fight, but this cat's calling me out. This cat's pushing me. I got to do something. So I didn't particularly gravitate towards him at first, but he knew my struggle by just watching me, and he cared. He told me, you're not dumb. No one's ever told me that shit, man. Prior to him, no one ever told me, you're not dumb. This was a retired cop. Did I mention that up top? Retired Irish cop. I said, right. I could have chose to say, man, fuck the police, whatever. But he just knew something. He called me out. I don't want to say he touched me.
Oh, wow. This took a really bad turn. Okay. Iggy does not mean that his coach touched him inappropriately. That is not this topic.
He struck a nerve. There you go.
Okay. That sounds much better than the alternative touching.
I saved it. Because he struck a nerve by calling me out. He goes, you're smarter than this shit. And no one's ever told me that, let alone call me out on my own shit. You dig? He didn't have to do that. None of the kids listened to his class at all. I was the only asshole that turned into work. Right.
We all know here that Iggy's very smart. We just call him dumb when he doesn't do his podcast homework.
Which I did this time. Where are my notes at? You know what? And so look, this man, and to this day, I'm friends with his cat. So when in your lead up story, when they became friends, and that's different because this cop fucked them over and then he helped them. In this case, Coach McGee helped me. And I'm gonna throw this one in there. I hope he doesn't listen to this because he'll be embarrassed. Because in one of those, he told me the secret of life. And check this out. Because again, none of the students would pay attention. No one would do their homework. It's like they had to pretend. Everyone just sat in the back. They didn't give a shit.
Oh, if I'd known we were going to talk about the secret of life, we could have built that a little bit more. I think maybe.
No. This is for fuckers that are really listening, because I was. And listen, he didn't tell me this directly, but he mumbled it. And this man, when I met him, he was 60. Right now, he's 93, and he's still alive, and I still know he's still my friend to this day. But he said, he kind of mumbled it. He goes, something about the secret of life. I'm like, what is this guy mumbling about? And he said, and pardon my French, but he said, dance, fuck, and laugh a lot.
That's good advice.
And he looked at it and I was like, oh shit, he kind of makes it. I was just 14 when I met when this is going on. I bumped into him when I was in my 30s at a bar, and I told, hey, Coach McGee, how you doing? He goes, hey, nice to see you. And I told him, did you remember telling me the secret of life? And he goes, what did I tell you? What did I tell you, son? And I said, you said,
dance and
do you remember? I was trying to get Kim to repeat it. And I told him, and he laughed, and he went, I don't remember, but that's something I would say. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, that was just a side.
Maybe he had a new secret of life by then. You maybe should have gotten an update.
Enough this shit. And also, look, in my family, I already mentioned in the last episode, or the one before that my dad was a motorcycle cop. And I hated that motherfucker. I hated him, but I still forgave him. We're all just humans, you dig? We're all just humans. My great uncle was a sheriff, and he was in enforcement for 50 plus years, right? This ties into my Rementeus Academy story, because my great uncle, allegedly, we don't know yet. We haven't done the fucking family tree.
Okay, so tell me about your great uncle, Iggy.
My great uncle was great.
That's the best description I've ever heard.
According to my mom, Leo Samaneo was my great uncle. We haven't figured out. We haven't done a
genealogy.
Genealogy, motherfucking.com. We haven't done it. But this man was. We're recording from El Paso. In El Paso County, he was one of the most popular sheriffs ever. Right, 50 years law enforcement, whatever. When I graduated from that little prison, Rementeus Academy, I had a little graduation ceremony, and he was gonna present me my certificate, my graduation certificate. You dig? And so it was a big moment for me because, oh man, I changed my life around. The sheriff of El Paso is going to give me, we have the same last name. He's going to remember me. You know what happened when I walked up and he shook my hand and he gave me my certificate?
What happened?
Nothing. Oh. He just gave it to me and I fucking kept walking. I thought we were going to have a moment. I thought he was going to be like, hey, good job, son. He didn't give a shit. He just went, here's your thing. Get out. Straight out, man. It was that uneventful.
In the story that we heard earlier about Officer Collins and Mr. McGee, it was very much about the forgiveness that Jameel McGee had to come forward with, because he could have hated this guy for the rest of his life.
Justifiably so.
Right. He did 3 years in prison because this guy was a big liar. How do you think that's something that people can do? Can they forgive someone who put them behind bars wrongfully?
You can, but it's gonna be hard as hell. And if you do it, it's gonna pay dividends. It is, because you just release that weight off of you, and it's no longer there for you to bear.
I think that's kind of something that comes up in their book. They talk about it. It's actually, their book is called Convicted, by the way. It came out in 2017. And I think that was really kind of the message that Jameel McGee was going for, is that, yeah, it's not easy to get to that point. Do you Do you recall any law enforcement officers that you interacted with where you feel like you had to forgive them?
Had to?
Or for yourself, not just like you had to for outside reasons, but for your own internal reasons.
You see, when I met McKay, I stopped. I stopped gangbanging, but I didn't stop being gangster. I still did shit on the side. I was just trying to work.
You're still gangsta.
I didn't go cold turkey. I didn't. So after that, look, I'll tell you like this. There was one time where a homie of mine, they pulled us over, and this dude threw his joints underneath the cop car.
Under the cop's car?
Yeah. And this. Have you ever seen a cop? They just know he's an asshole just by looking at his face.
I mean, I try not to make that judgment, but I get where you're coming from.
I'll call it. You could just look at him and go, this dude's a dick. So he pulls over. My friend throws 2 joints underneath the car. I was about 4, whatever. But the cop looks at me and he goes, here. He asked my friend this. He goes, where do you live? And this cat goes, blah, 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 whatever numbers, house. And he goes, no shit, you live in a house, idiot. My friend was trying to say house, HOWZE street.
Oh.
So this cop starts beating his ass for saying house when he thought he meant which house.
He was just ready to jump down his throat.
And he starts beating him in front of me and I go, fuck, man, there's 2 of them, there's 2 of us. Let me see it. And it wasn't bad. It was just a little rough up. And then he sees the joints and the cop looks at me and he goes, whose is that? I'm not going to say it's my homie's. So I go, it's mine, man. Plus you already beat his ass. So I go, that's mine. And he goes, I'll make sure and tell your friend you said it was his. And he went into my homie, your dude just knocked you out. And I'm looking at my friend like, nah, bro, I didn't say. I tried to take blame for this shit. But this dude was just to fuck with my friend. Anyways, so that's that little story. Years later, I start becoming friends with a bigger law enforcement agent because I was working with at-risk kids and he's in charge of that department, blah, blah, blah. But I see him somewhere in public and he goes, oh, I've heard about you trying to do work with my department with these juvenile kids. Thank you. I go, thank you, man. And he goes, by the way, this is my friend, my partner. And it was that cop that roughed up my friend.
It was the same guy.
The same dude, because you can never forget an asshole face. Like, so I looked at him for a split second and went, man, fuck this cat. Granted, it's been 20, 15 years that I have not been an outlaw, whatever, right? I was a family man. But I still had the resentment. But I still went, I'll shake his hand. We're over this shit already, right? But it took about 2 seconds from me going, man, fuck this cat too. Shaking his hand.
Yeah, you had to have that moment of like kind of thinking it through, right? Just to get to that point. Well, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about some more of these interactions with law enforcement. You've shared with us a very positive interaction with respect to Coach McKay, and then a not so positive aspect with the other officer who was going after your friend. But we'll talk some more about that when we come back.
Hey there, friends and pals. If you want to catch more of The Counselor and the Con, sign up at thecounselorandthecon.com and look us up at the Border Geek Podcast Network on Facebook. This is God.
And we're back. Welcome back to The Counselor and the Con. So we've just come back from a break and we haven't talked too much about like kind of our process in recording this podcast so far. But for those of you listening, we're actually recording from my home office, which during the days of COVID is like the home everything. So we have to take breaks though, because we're sitting in these like folding chairs and around this little tiny table, and we're trying to make this recording, sound decent, of course. But I recently started a new personal training program, and I did glutes today, and I'm not gonna lie to you, my butt is sore.
Top of the legs day. That's what I call it.
Yeah. So, I mean, Iggy, you started boxing when you were talking about with Coach McKay, but you still box, right?
I train, but my specialty is being really good at getting my ass kicked. That's what I'm really good at.
But you have that you have like a boxing dummy that you play with? Well, maybe play with isn't the word.
It depends, man. If I'm desperate, I'll play with it.
How often do you like practice, or what? I guess what do you call train? You tell me. What do you call it?
You know what, man? I'm okay, especially right now. Dad bod is in and shit, so I'm all right with having a gut. I just want shoulders so I don't look weak. And what I do is I hit it more for mental clarity, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, instead of fighting myself, I just go and I pretend that dummy is me and I just beat the shit out of it. That's my workout. Oh,
I totally feel that. Like, one of the things that I've noticed about being in the gym more often is like I'm definitely in my own head, but it's also this process of like just kind of getting through all the crap that goes on in a standard day.
And with mine, I'll hit mine just randomly, but I'll do it. If I start, I'll go 20 minutes, let's say, whatever. But I just like that. I'm not antisocial. Yeah, I am. I'm antisocial, man. I don't like it.
You
But
wouldn't know it from listening to you talk
it
on the
is.
podcast, but Iggy's the quiet one.
Shh, cállate.
Usually it's me who like can't be shut up.
But I like that, and I'm not condoning this to anyone else, right? But I like smoking some medicine and then working out. It's weird. Or sometimes I've been this has happened. Don't judge me, but I've been halfway through my workout and go, let me just take a drink of this beer. I don't get drunk, but I'll take another sip and then I'll keep working out.
I specifically am not allowed to drink during my workouts or immediately thereafter. And if my trainer's listening, I definitely did not have a Truly before we recorded tonight.
Don't hate. What's your trainer's name?
Matt.
Matt, I knew it. Matt, don't hate.
Okay, so let's get back to what we were talking about earlier. We were talking about, this idea of interactions with law enforcement and how there's both positive and negative. One of the things that has really come to the forefront lately, especially in the news and everything else we're hearing, is what do we do as citizens, as a society? And this is like big, deep thoughts. When an officer doesn't act the way that they're supposed to, when they actually break the law in trying to bring about a conviction or an arrest. Do you have an impression about that? Like, what do you think from your side?
Well, in the most basic breakdown of this, they should be called out. Watch, like, yes, I was in a gang. I committed a lot of fucked up crimes, right? But if, let's say, one of my homies was a pedophile, we wouldn't go, well, we can't cross that line. He's part of us. We'd go, hey, man, get the fuck out of here. We'd call him out. So if there's cool cops, right on there is. I just gave you a story of one. There's cool cops. But when there's a fucked up cop or you know what I'm saying? They should call themselves out too.
So you think that like officers owe kind of their profession the duty to tell, not to tell on each other, not to tattle, but like to find the ones who are really blatantly violating the law and to do something about it?
They think they do. They think they have to. No, because listen, that snitches get stitches shit, that's for the streets. That's not for you guys. You guys are professionals, you dig?
Right. So you think snitches get stitches should not be the standard for officers?
No, they should snitch. Not to get someone in trouble, but if an officer mishandled the situation and went overboard, other cops should go, hey, man, what's up? As opposed to being, oh, we can't say nothing because of thin blue line or whatever they call it in the movies. Nah, man, fuck that shit, you know?
And so there is actually a federal statute. And I'm talking about federal law because, hey, good news. We have listeners all over the U.S. now.
Yay.
Woohoo! We got some in Virginia, Michigan, California, all the way down to the southern border. Yay, shout out to everybody.
What about Chihuahua?
I don't
from
know.
the motherland?
Maybe, but so I'm talking about this on the federal level because there are also state laws that deal with this. But I just kind of wanted to introduce something that would apply everywhere we have listeners. And so there is actually a federal law about law enforcement misconduct, and it's a constitutional violation when a law enforcement officer acts in a way that is outside of the law. So here's the criteria. First of all, the officer have to have committed some sort of crime. So again, it's not just that they made an arrest or made a conviction, it's that they have to have committed a crime in the process. So
you're talking about the perp has to commit a crime.
No, the officer. If you're going to go after an officer for inappropriate conduct, it can't be that they were doing their job within their protocols and we just didn't like it. That certainly is an issue that we're dealing with these days. You know, that certain protocols that are in place are not ones that everybody likes. But it has to actually be a violation of the law, whatever this officer has done. And then the government has to think that they're going to be likely to be able to convict them for it. So they don't just like charge them, on suspicion, but they have to just hopefully, like with other people, they have to have real evidence that the officer committed a crime.
But it's in the way they're kind of in cahoots. It's like your homie telling you, hey, man, don't say that I did something bad, right?
Yes, sometimes. And this is one of the parts about this being a federal crime is that it is somewhat separated. So federal crimes are prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office, whereas state crimes are prosecuted by the district attorney. And they're two different sets of attorneys. And so there's two different kind of forces at work there. So sometimes what can happen is that the federal agency, in this case it's the Department of Justice, can investigate a law enforcement officer who is a state officer, and then they can bring federal charges through the U.S. Attorney's Office. So it's not the people they work with every day necessarily.
Yeah, that's called red tape. Nah, it is what it is, man. That's the way it has to go down. But yeah.
Yeah, so there's multiple levels of government. And so the idea is that there is a law out there that's supposed to protect citizens and anyone who interacts with the police, and to protect their civil rights and give some means for vindication when they act outside of that. So what I keep saying, like, act outside the law. Well, what do I mean? Like if the officer physically assaults someone who they are trying to bring in, like if someone has just been arrested or detained, or they're being held in jail, but they haven't been convicted yet. Typically they have to show that the officer used more force than was reasonably necessary to arrest or gain control of the victim. So it's this like standard of what does a reasonable officer do?
Not a knee on the neck, right?
Oh, it turns out, yeah.
Not a knee on the neck for fucking 8 minutes. But, and also, man, again, because I'm not playing devil's advocate. Look, I'm just telling you, on my end, I've seen good and I've seen bad, right? But where's the middle ground? These cats are still human. And I know we're not close to the end of the episode, but I was not going to close with this story, only because my homie that this story involves, I'm pretty sure he's going to kill me if he finds out.
Oh no!
Should we say his name? I'll probably
no. Let's not say his name then.
All right. His nickname, Pinche Famoso. But it involves just that. A cop. He was not a dick. You know what? I should just tell the story instead
Go
of
ahead.
fucking.
Just tell us the story.
Here it is. And sorry, Famoso. Sorry, I know you're gonna fucking hate me for this shit, brother, but I gotta do it because people gotta know this. Look, my homie Famoso he's not a good guy on paper. But he was did you know that this cat, I took an IQ test, side note, because Cam, I don't know if you guys know this, but Cam has
no. Don't talk about my IQ level. No, we're not going to, we don't want to go down that road.
We won't. But I told you, when I graduated high school a year early, I was the only one from my gang that even went to fucking school, right? So my homie that I'm talking about, Famoso, later on, we took an IQ test. This cat scored higher than me. He dropped out in fucking middle school. So this guy had potential. He was a nice dude, except that he had a reputation to upkeep. We all did. We came from the streets, right? But so this cat that I'm talking about, and he was driving drunk, and don't even judge, man, because we've all done it. I'm buzzed. I'm okay. So I'm buzzed. I'm okay.
Right. Well, these standards that we're talking about for these officers, it's not a question of whether or not the person that they're interacting with is innocent or not. It's did they act reasonably in, pursuing that.
But when this cop, because he pulled my homie over a block away from his house, right? And I'm sure he ran the place, he ran his name, whatever, right? So he knew, oh shit, it popped up. He already had an assault on a police officer, which was bogus too. I'll talk about that one in another episode. But so this is the second time that he has a tussle with the cops, right? Mm-hmm. But they just pulled him over, lit him up. He pulls over. The cop comes up. He goes, "What's your name?" And he goes, "I'm wanted, man. You got me. This is my name. Just hold up. Let me call my girl to come pick up the truck." So the cop goes like, "Get out, get out." He doesn't. 4 more come out. They drag him out and they whoop him. They whoop him bad. Here's what we're trying to get with the story, because 10 years after this has happened, my homie gets pulled over again by the cop that originally pulled him over, right?
The same one?
The same one. This is 10 years later. And the cop says, I didn't even say which city this is. All right. But the cop asks my homie his name, and he gives him, he goes, he had that oh shit moment, like, oh, that's...
Like it clicked for him.
That's you. He goes, used to live on this street? He goes, yeah. And he goes, the cop starts apologizing to my homie. He goes, I'm so sorry that we whooped you like we did. This is why he said sorry, because the cop, my homie told me this story, right? This is why I don't want to tell you that he told me the story, because he told me fucking 10 years after it happened. Mm-hmm. So this is 20 years after the fact, right? Bisected by 10 years. But he told me that when they kicked his ass royally, where they had him in the front with his hands cut behind his back, and he was bleeding, gushing blood into the hood of the police car. And they told him, no. Yes, and they told him, hey man, don't be spitting blood on my fucking my hood. And he said, I'm not spitting it. It's just coming out. That type of bad beating, right? Anyway, so the cop tells my friend, I'm so sorry, man, because when that happened, I was a rookie. And he goes, I should have done something about them going overboard like they did, but I didn't because I didn't know what to do.
He didn't know, right?
His conscience had taken for that long.
Well, and I think that's part of the conversation that's happening nationally right now is the training that officers maybe should get, or maybe they do get it, but they're not retaining some of that information, or they just don't know how to professionally interact with one another sometimes.
That's true. And you know what I like about this podcast, man? And you know what? Our producer, Nico Pico Rico, could edit this shit out because it's about to get real. I could have left it at that. And, maybe we could have moved on after what you said. And I wasn't going to say this part either. But look, the cop then says to my homie, again, I haven't said which city this is in, but the cop then says to my homie, did you ever see the tape?
Oh, it was recorded?
It was recorded, and Famoso goes, what do you mean the tape? And he goes, dude, that beating, they used to spread around the whole department, and they would watch it and laugh like, oh, look at this jackass getting his ass beat while handcuffed.
Wow.
So at what, where are they going to show them training to go, hey, don't be a dick like this and brag about being a handcuffed dude. Let's say he deserved it, but on paper he did, but he really didn't.
Well, this federal statute that I'm talking about, about how do we kind of pursue these instances that occur, it actually addresses that as well. So there's if an officer purposely allows a fellow officer to violate a victim's constitutional rights, like standing by while they're in handcuffs and getting beaten, that sounds like a pretty strong example of that, then they can be prosecuted under the same law for being like a bystander. And it's a constitutional, it's a constitutional issue. And if that officer was aware that the person was, having their rights violated and they had the opportunity to intervene and then they chose not to, then yeah, they can be prosecuted too.
As well they should. I mean, the only way you're going to get rid of bad weeds is by fucking plucking them. That's it.
Yeah, and I mean, again, to go back to it though, the standard that we're expecting the officers to meet is the standard of a reasonable officer. So I can totally see though where an officer who pulls over someone who's previously been accused or convicted, I don't know if you said, was he accused or convicted of assault on an officer?
Oh yeah, accused and convicted.
Oh, okay, so
on top of the DWI.
Yeah, so he already has a conviction for officer assault. You've got to think that officer is nervous going into that situation, and maybe his senses are heightened, and he's got to protect himself. So I think there's some real justification in those circumstances for the officer being on high alert.
Yeah, they have a hard job, man. So I'm gonna say that up front too. They have a hard job. They're fucking humans too.
Right.
But I just thought about this. I not contradicting myself. Because when they pulled over my homie, he didn't identify himself. He just took up, hold on, I'm calling my chick.
Ooh.
So he didn't know that this cat had that prior, and which, by the way, that prior was bullshit. I'll talk about it on another episode. Don't edit this out, Nico Pico Rico. But there, and again, he had remorse for it. The cop 10 years later remembered the case, the story, the whatever, and apologized to this dude.
Well, I think where that story really goes awry is like once they have him in handcuffs and they could realistically, like what you said, it was like 4 officers, they could get him into the back of the squad car. He's handcuffed and, they have control over him. At that point, that's when you don't get to use physical force against someone who is in custody. I think that's what this law is designed to protect.
I mean, if you're talking about how we're going to change this, we're going to talk about reforms and laws and all this shit. And what my expertise is in this podcast is breaking down like someone in the streets would, right? I've met cops that are cool. Have you ever seen that show, Live PD? A lot of people.
Yes.
I used to love that show. They canceled it. They shouldn't have canceled that show. You know why? Because I used to watch Live PD, and it's the only times that I would see cops give warnings. Every time I see an interaction, it's always a ticket, arrest. On this show, they actually fucking gave warnings. It's more like they're trying to save face. That show should run on forever. It should be on every police department, man.
That's so wild because that's like what it sounds like you're telling me is that like the most positive interactions that you've observed were from a TV show instead of from real life.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. And I was about to say, it's because the cameras make them keep it honest. It is.
I think the cameras do have that role. And so I think it's important as much for the officer as it is for the person who they're interacting with.
Let me ask you this, Kim. Cam. Have you ever gotten pulled over and got a warning?
Yes. I have gotten many warnings in my time. These mostly are traffic infractions, but I should say all traffic infractions, because I have a little lead foot problem.
Right on that shit. And I've seen the sports car you drive. Listen, if I had a Ferrari, I would too.
I wish I had a Ferrari. No, one time I actually was on a trip. I was going from West Texas down to Central Texas, and then I was going all the way up into New Mexico, and it was over like a week-long period, right?
And for our listeners that are not in Texas, what'd you say from Michigan? From Michigan, in that stretch what you're talking about, it's nothing but desert. That's where you should haul ass.
Right, exactly. So, but during that week-long trip, I got pulled over no less than 3 times.
Warnings every time?
2 out of 3. The last one finally got me a ticket. But
and it was a chick officer.
No, that's the part that surprised me.
And that's alien to me. Every time
Right.
I have an interaction, I've always gotten either, well, not arrested because but citation of some sort, a fucking tongue lashing of some sort, and is that really the way every interaction should be? Where let me drop the hammer on this motherfucker and show him what's up,
Right.
as opposed to if they just went, hey man, you know what, your shit's expired, go get it taken care of.
And let's not encourage officers to start writing tickets to blonde girls who speed. Let's just instead say everybody deserves a break now and then.
You know what? And you know what? Since he's not here, I'm gonna say this quick story. Hopefully, he does not listen when he's editing. But our
Trick him.
Our editor, Nico Pico Rico.
He's our technical producer, by the way. Editor is a totally different thing.
It was minor infractions again, but I got pulled over with him, and I went into automatic. Oh shit! What's gonna go down mode? I'm not paranoid. I'm still friendly with the cops as much as they show reciprocates.
Mutual respect.
Yeah, and I'm not going to mention the details of the stop, but it was a minor infraction. But at the end of it, I'm going, shit. For one of them, I had a warrant, because this is 2 times, but one of them I had a warrant. And not only did they let him go, they didn't even give him a warning. This is what they gave him. They gave him a fucking apology. Excuse my French, but both times they gave him a fucking apology. And he's white as white could be.
Okay, yeah. So Nico, he has very pale skin. He's not like Anglo in heritage, but you can't, like, he looks whiter than I do.
That and I think it's also the soccer mom SUV and the fact that he dresses like Steve from Blue's Clues. So you feel bad. You feel bad giving him an infraction. I get it, but
insert Blue's Clues music here, Nico.
We just figured out Nico's clues. No, but
oh my gosh.
He's gonna edit all this shit out.
Oh, we're gonna get in so much trouble. That's okay. I don't care.
But watch, he was not on his way to rob a bank. He was not on his way to do nothing fucked up. That's cool. Give him a warning. But do that to the other people too.
Right.
That's what I'm saying, man. Is keep it even, equal, whatever. If you pull over a black person, I get it. Sometimes, whatever, you feel intimidated. They got bigger muscles than you. Whatever.
But if they're not behaving in a way that is threatening, then there's no reason to treat them with any less respect or deference than you would a person of any other color.
And you know why that's important? Because I've met black people, Mexican people, that they look intimidating, but they're not. And I've met,
they could be pussycats.
And I've met fucking gangster killers, dude. Yeah. Those that actually murdered someone. And you look at them, you don't feel.
You just never know.
You don't feel safe at all. But these cats will slice your neck.
Look at some of those serial killers out there who look like totally nice dudes.
That's racist because it's always a white dude.
Right? That's what I'm saying. Like, let's do a reverse around here.
You seen when it was like a.
Oh, there's like a meme about it, right?
I love this, and you know what? I'm gonna promise this to the listeners. One of these days, man, I don't know what it's gonna take, but one of these days, I'm gonna get an FBI profiler to do an interview with us because I'm gonna ask him.
Those are big promises, Iggy.
Listen, I'm gonna do it. You know why? Because I'm gonna tell them this. I'm gonna go, I could do your job, not because I'm smart. Because every time there's an FBI profiler, and they go, so what do you think about the perp? They always go, same shit. white male.
Right, aged
I
what,
could be an
30 to
FBI
40
profiler.
or whatever it is.
I could be an FBI profiler. White male, 18 to 99 years old. And they're usually right. I watch 465 episodes of Forensic Files. I know.
So that is now his new expertise is forensic files. Well, with that, we're going to wrap up our episode for today. Just a side note, we're going to be releasing new episodes on Sunday nights. So they'll be fresh and ready for your Monday commute.
That way, you know what? This is the way your Monday doesn't suck.
We can bring that to you, helping Monday not suck quite so much. And if you liked what you heard, as always, please be sure to follow us. And again, we hope that you've enjoyed this episode. Keep away from the silver bracelets and see you next crime.
I te watcho.
I am still a lawyer, so of course I have to give a small disclaimer. I am a practicing attorney, but I am not your attorney. This show is not intended to give you legal advice, and it's not intended to be attorney advertising of any kind. If you liked what you heard, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to The Counselor and the Con on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or whatever platform you're using. Source information from today's show is in our show notes. You can also follow us on Facebook at Counselor and Con, on Instagram at The Counselor and the Con.
And this will be the only time that I encourage people to do creepy shit. Follow us on social media, DM us, tell your friends about us. Just help us spread the word. Also, if you have a crime story that you would like for us to showcase on the show, send us what we call a kite to cam. You could either email us at counselorandcon@gmail.com, or like I said, DM us. You could also visit the website at counselorandcon.
Counselorandcon.com. It's a little bit of a tongue twister.
No, it's just brain damage, girl.
This has been a production of Dangerous Minds, LLC. Thanks to our technical producer and fellow homie, Nico Ajiman. We are distributed by Border Geeks Podcast Network with executive producer Jib Saad.